just want to get more perspective and see what's done day to day. So I
That's
can.
great. That's great, Pankaj. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for joining everyone. Good morning and good evening, good afternoon, whatever the time you have in your region. So today we are going to have a session on Scrum events, sprint planning, sprint review, and sprint retrospective meeting, and daily Scrum. And we've been conducting these meetings from more than 2 months now. I think we have a gap of 2 weeks for this meeting. And yeah, today Ella is going to present on Scrum events. Probably you know about Ella, most of them, and I will give a short introduction about him if you don't know about him. And Ella finished his bachelor's from IIT India. Then he worked with Deloitte for as a consultant in various Asia and European projects. Then he moved to Ireland, Dublin, to finish his master's program at Trinity, MBA as a strategy in MBA strategy. At the moment, he's working with a reputational financial firm in Dublin, Davy Group, as a senior business analyst and project manager. So this is a short introduction about Yella. So yeah, I will hand over this to Yella.
Thanks, Sravant, for the introduction. Sravant runs this Universal Agile and Scrum. Okay, one thing before I start talking, I'm going to switch off my video, just to make sure that my broadband doesn't act weird. Yeah, yeah. Sravant runs this meetup group, Universal Agile and Scrum, and he's a good friend of mine. We kind of thought, we'll do sessions on project methodologies, and educate people for free rather than they go to a paid provider or service provider and pay a lot of money. It's not cheap in Ireland. I don't think it's cheap in India too. So we wanted to have our sessions on various methodologies and on the content required for the certifications, agile certifications like PMI, ACP, CSM, CSPO, PSM, PSPO, which has become very basic in every CV now. So helping out people who are preparing for those certifications, and helping people who are in another industry and get a perspective about what happens in software development projects. Yeah, and today's session is about Scrum Framework, which is widely used in most of the organizations, be it financial services, be it technology, be it software, be it e-commerce, logistics, even automobiles and stuff. So I think, yeah, thanks for taking time out to attend this session. I hope you'll have some key points to use, some key takeaways to take away from this session. I mean, again, Sravant already introduced me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at LRD Aluru, and host Sravant is a PSM himself and is a Safify Agilist. He can be reached at Sravant365 on LinkedIn. Today's agenda is, you can see it on there, like it's about Agile Values, Scrum Pillars, a few of the pre-sprint activities which we do, and again, I'll be talking about the roles in Scrum Framework, the events in Scrum Framework, and the artifacts that are used in Scrum Framework. And at the end, we'll talk about the certifications in Scrum. For this session, you can stop me anywhere. You can ask me questions. You can also ask me to provide additional information, like the application of each of these things in actual project development lifecycle. Okay, any questions till now? So Agile Values, if you go through Scrum Guide, or you go through any kind of book on Agile product methodology, these ones are in the first 10 pages, because that's where they start. They start the Agile methodology with. Without these 4 statements, it's really difficult to understand what Agile methodology is about. If you came to this session to learn about Agile and Scrum, you would have already worked on waterfall methodology, which is, it's like a waterfall where you you do requirement gathering at the start, and then you give the requirements to the design team to design some technical designs and write some specification documents, and then the design team then pass on those documents to technical developer team and who develop the solution, and then it goes on to testing cycles where there'll be multiple runs like functional unit testing, system testing, integration testing, and user acceptance testing. And then once users say, yeah, this is good, then it goes to production. There's no connection between each of these cycles. There is no adaptation. There's no inspection during during each of these cycles. That makes it difficult to to tell if the product is actually what the users want. During requirement, let's say the projects usually run for 6 months to one year or more than 1 year. The requirements which are on the start of the year may not be the requirements at the end of the year, purely because the business keeps changing, the economic cycle keeps changing, and the wants and needs keep changing. So that's the reason, waterfall may not be a better methodology when it comes to knowledge work projects, whereas it may be really good in an automotive industry or in any kind of manufacturing setup where they are manufacturing hardware devices for certain user group. So when it comes to software in 2001, I guess a group of people met and they talked about agile values and agile methodology, and then a couple of them from that group in 2003 they came up with Scrum framework. So yeah, that's the background story behind waterfall and agile. With respect to agile values, the four values: individuals and interactions. I mean, the four values give importance to individual and interactions, working software, collaboration, and responding to change. On the other side, if you see process and tools, that's pure. That's process and tools are very important in waterfall. Comprehensive documentation, it's very important in waterfall because after requirements gathering, you use the documents to design team. After designing is done, design team use the technical design and functional design documents to developers, and the next team works on the detailed documentation done by the other team. So that's how the waterfall runs. But in case of agile or even Scrum, it's the working software which is very important, and the individuals who are involved in developing this working software are important rather than the process and tools. And these individuals, they should be self-organizing and they should be collaborating with each other, and they should also have a good collaboration with the customer rather than worrying about the contracts. Like usually you have few contract types called graduate fixed. There's a fixed contract. There's a agile contract. I mean, those are not for this session, but a lot of times we fight with our clients over contracts rather than collaborating with our clients to get the work done faster and in with higher quality. So agile methodology gives preference to that kind of collaboration over contract negotiation. And the last but the key agile value is responding to change. We do have a video on our YouTube channel on responding to change. You can go to that for more details, but responding to change is basically, hey, instead of following a plan, make decisions at the moment based on what you have. For example, you are Amazon India, you're an employee of Amazon India, and Flipkart came up with a new feature, and but you have a product roadmap for 12 months. But Flipkart's feature is really great, and it can replace some of the things. I mean, some of the features which you were thinking to implement may not be good, and you think Flipkart's feature is really good. If you implement it, there'll be higher sales revenue. So that's kind of responding to change. You're always on your toes in a project which uses agile project methodology. So yeah, it's plain and clear, but if you want more details, you can watch the other video which I have on our YouTube channel. Anything on agile values? You need to remember these because these do come in any kind of agile certifications. If you're preparing for PMI ACP, which is Agile Certified practitioner, which is equivalent to PMP in Agile methodology, the many situational questions based on these Agile values. So it's not just remembering them; you need to ingrain them into your working style. Okay. And the next one is Scrum Pillars. There are two questions definitely on this in PSM 1 about which of the following is not a Scrum Pillar, which of the following is a Scrum Pillar, and that's quantitative question. Qualitatively, we need to understand what these Scrum Pillars talk about. So in a Scrum framework, the information is very important. So everyone should know what's happening at that moment in the project. That's about transparency, because if you have the right information, you can you can make decisions wisely. And one of the things in transparency is osmotic communication. In a Scrum framework or Agile methodology, suggest co-location, so that if everyone is located at the same place, if I'm communicating with a person, there may be other person who would overhear that, and he can use that information in his development. So one of the things, one of the pillar for Scrum to work is transparency. Everyone should know what's happening. For that reason, people, companies use Jira, Confluence, and give access to everyone to access information on burned-on charts and other kind of reports which are usually used in Scrum. But these are not required for the certification. But these are some things which you can learn about when you're reading Scrum Guide or any kind of Agile methodology book. The second one is inspection. Inspection basically, is about inspecting the solution which you develop. In Scrum, I don't know if you know this, but we run multiple sprints. I'll be talking about that next. But in each sprint, at the end of the sprint, we'll be inspecting the developed software or developed feature. And only after inspection, we approve the software to go on to production. So there are multiple cycles of inspections. You do it every day in an event called daily Scrum. You do it in sprint review. You also do it in sprint planning. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, inspection is basically inspecting the developed software every now and then. Adaptation is again responding to change, as I was telling earlier. Adaptation is adapting the solution based on what the market wants and what the team wants and what's best at that moment. So these three are pillars. In short, information, and inspection is testing, and adaptation is adapting to the situation you are in, rather than stressing out for the plan to be implemented. Before, Scrum framework works on a thing called sprint. So for the sprints to start, any kind of Scrum project may have 10 sprints, 3 sprints, 4 sprints, even 1 sprint or 2 sprints, based on the size of work you are doing. And before you start any kind of sprint, you do few steps, and these are the activities. These are not required for the Scrum exam, the PSM one, but I thought it's good to give some background before we jump into Scrum events or Scrum roles or Scrum artifacts. So before we start a sprint, we work on vision statement. Vision statement is basically the goal of project, and this vision statement usually comes from the project sponsor. For example, there's a business within your firm who wants to say, hey, if we want to increase our sales, and to increase our sales, we need to build a product. That would be vision statement. And whereas product roadmap will be, okay, they need a product. What kind of product it should be? What should be the high level features within that product? And what is the deadline for the delivery? Anything related to product is done by product owner. This is a role name within Sprint, but product owner is basically a product manager who manages the product backlog, manages the sprint backlog, works with the development team, works with the stakeholders and users. You'll know more about his role in the future slides. that's about product roadmap is nothing but a plan to release the product with the features which the sponsor or sponsors team requires. And the stories, okay, there's a certain difference between features and stories. Like features are high level features. Okay, they say, hey, if you're developing a movie ticket selling website, the feature would be I want to sell movie tickets. That would be the feature on the website. But stories would be within selling, there'll be multiple steps, right? I want the movies to be displayed. I want the payment integration to be done. I want the people who want to buy ticket to click on buy now. If they want to add to the cart, have a add to button. So those are requirements, detailed requirements. Those are the stories or user stories. And then these user stories go into a ordered list called product backlog. Product backlog is basically all the user stories, or it's not a document. Some people call it a document, but it's a list of ordered list of all the user stories which the user wants to use. And product owner main duty is to prioritize the user stories within this product backlog. There are a couple of videos on our channel around estimation and prioritization. Those videos will give you more details about how to estimate user stories, the techniques in Agile methodology which we can use to estimate what user stories and how to prioritize user stories based on the requirements or the adaptation piece during the project. So you need to have these things done before you start sprint. Okay, that's bare minimum, and we can use Jira to store these user stories. Within Jira, you have epics and user stories and other issue types. Epics are large collection of user stories, whereas the user stories are a detailed requirement which has no more development work to be added except for developing that particular user story. Any questions on this? Please feel free to ask questions. The more questions, the more learning for me to, if I do not know something. It's not like everyone knows everything. Okay, then.
We are good to go, Ella.
Yeah. Cool. So as part of agenda, I told we already covered the first three things. Next comes the important part, which is why we have this session: Scrum roles, summaries, and artifacts. Within Scrum, there are three main roles in this. The three main roles in Scrum: product owner, Scrum master, team members. Every project will have only one single product owner to manage the product backlog. Okay, he is this whole and sole owner. He can make any kind of decisions related to product. He is responsible for prioritizing the product backlog, managing the product backlog, removing user stories, adding user stories, removing sprint. If the sprint goal is not being reached in a sprint, he can cancel the sprint. He has a lot of duties, and these duties are detailed in the Scrum guide, which is mandatory for you need to read it 5 to 6 times before you give any kind of Scrum certification. So yeah, product owner is one single authority on the product backlog on the project. In some companies, this product manager is called business analyst. In some companies, this product owner is called product manager. So different names, but the role is same. Scrum master is basically a servant leader. Servant leader is his only duty is to serve the Scrum teams. And every project will have a Scrum master, but the Scrum master can work on multiple projects at the same time, because the only duty he has is the Scrum framework should be implemented properly, and he is the authority on removing the impediments. For example, let's say product owner is not available for the development team to give information on prioritization or some of the partial tickets. Then Scrum Master helps development team by talking to functional manager of product owner, saying, "Hey, we need product owner full time on this project, but you are making." He will not complain, but he says, I'm trying to serve the development team, and product owner is required. If product owner is busy or he's on some leave or something, they get a new product owner, or those kind of decisions are done by Scrum Master. And third, very important, these guys are most powerful in the Scrum team because they are the one who are on the ground developing the software. That's the development team, and they're responsible to deliver whatever items are on the product backlog. And they are the accountable people because they were, I mean, at the end, they are the ones who are developing the solutions. This development team is basically a self-organizing team. When I say a self-organizing team, there's no titles. Everyone is equal, irrespective of senior or junior, and they work on, they work daily. They have few events where they are involved that will come in the further slides, but they are the important piece in the Scrum team. So Scrum team is basically three roles: product owner, Scrum master, and development team. But their external people are also involved with Scrum team, but they are not part of the Scrum team. They are the users who test the solution, and the stakeholders who are project sponsors or external vendors, or they can be anyone. This is the Scrum environment which you need to be aware of, and these are the Scrum roles. So during interviews, if you say we use Scrum methodology, but I was product manager in Scrum framework, it right away people get to know, okay, this guy did not work on Scrum, because that's not what Scrum is. Just be careful with using titles in Scrum projects. Yeah. Any questions on the roles here? Okay, then I'm going to the next slide. Yeah. Now comes the important part, like how to run a sprint. As I told earlier, a Scrum project may have multiple sprints, and I also talked about the pre-sprint activities, ending up with the product backlog. Now, during sprint, you have the product backlog. You pick up in sprint planning meeting, product owner works with the development team in estimation uh, of the user stories, and then the development team picks up few of the top priority user stories for development. So that's what happens in sprint planning. Sprint planning happens for us. I'll talk about the duration and all later, but during sprint planning, the goal is to come up with a sprint goal and the sprint backlog for the development team to work. And that involves prioritization, involves estimation, involves user story elicitation, more detailed documentation. Documentation in sense, more details from the stakeholders and the users for whom we are developing this software. And once they have the sprint backlog and a sprint goal to achieve, development team, they meet daily in a event called Daily Scrum, which happens for 15 minutes. And every day they meet for those 15 minutes, talk about what they did yesterday, what they are doing today, and if they have any impediments. The word impediment means that if they have any concerns or troubles or they need support with something. So on daily basis, you're asking the team if they need anything, if they need support or if they need help. So this again ties back to the pillars as well as Agile values. Okay, so everything which origins come from work ties back to 3 Scrum pillars and the 4 Agile values. So the daily Scrum runs for the period of the sprint every day, and then at the end of the sprint, they meet the stakeholders and showcase their solution. And during sprint review, they review the sprint, they review the product increment, and at the end, a stakeholder approves it, and the product owner says, yeah, this is the approved product increment, and they deploy the solution to the actual production. Whenever you're imagining Scrum, imagine an app, or you can imagine a website where they're continuously working on to add features. Website like Amazon or even any ticket company or even Bright, it can be anything. But imagine you working on such kind of projects, and think about what happens in the product backlog, how to prioritize, how to look at the competitors, features and stuff. And at last, there's a sprint retrospective meeting. Retrospective itself means to think, introspect yourself about how the work went. And during sprint retrospective, the usual questions people try to answer are there anything? Is there anything which we need to improve on? Is there anything which we did really well, which needs to be carried on? And is there anything which we can do different in the future? So that's the sprint retrospective. We'll go through details in the next slide. First, I'll be talking about sprint plan. So usually the sprint can be a week, or it can be 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. I have it. I've been in projects which are 4-week sprints, which are 2-week sprints, and 3-week sprints. It's the shorter the better. So we got more work done in 2-week sprints than 4-week sprints. We went for 4-week sprints because of the team dynamics back then, but smaller the better. For a 4-week sprint, 8 hours would be the sprint planning meeting duration. For a 2-week sprint, it would be 4 hours. It's linear. For a 3-week sprint, it would be 6 hours. For a 1-week sprint, it would be 2 hours. But the activities carried on in any sprint planning meeting is same. Come up with a sprint goal, come up with the sprint backlog that needs to be developed during this particular sprint. The attendees are complete Scrum team. Complete Scrum team means Scrum Master, product owner, all the developers. Developers is development team. Okay. Sometimes you may also have users or stakeholders if you need help with some of the user requirements. That's the decision product owner will take on behalf of the entire Scrum team. Daily Scrum is, once you have the sprint backlog, you meet the development team. Basically meets every day for 15 minutes. Product owner, Scrum Master are optional on this, but if they want, they can attend. But it happens for 15 minutes, and usually the 3 questions which I just mentioned earlier, that each person will get time to answer 3 questions: what they did yesterday, what they are doing today, and if they have any impediments that needs support. So the goal is to understand the progress and impediments. The third event or ceremony is sprint review. It happens for 4 hours for a 4-week sprint. If it's a 3-week sprint, 3 hours. 2-week sprint, 2 hours. Shorter the better. Again, you'll have questions on this, time boxing on the PSM1 exam, and you'll also have questions on who are the attendees, and you'll also have questions on what's the goal of sprint review. So make sure that you run through all the details before you attempt the exam. The attendees in sprint review is entire Scrum team, Scrum Master, product owner, and developers, and all the key stakeholders, because they need to look at the demo of the software which is developed, and they give us feedback. And if there's no feedback, you deploy the solution to production. So sprint review meeting is really important meeting in the Scrum framework. For me, this is the most important, because you are inspecting the solution with the key stakeholders, and you're demoing, and you're also collecting feedback. So you get more information here. And this is a validation for the development work which is being done by development team. The last but not least, because this is important for the Scrum team, not for the project as such. For a 4-week sprint, it runs for 3 hours. For a 2-week sprint, 1.5 hours. The main the goal of this retrospective event is, what's to decide what's working well, what's not working well, what changes we should make to be at a better place. This is like a delta session. When I say delta session, an adaptation session. Let's say in last Scrum, the estimation was wrong, or the priority list did not really tell the stakeholders priority. So they brainstorm saying, hey, okay, our estimation went wrong. Why it went wrong? What can we do to make it correct? And this gives us few things that we need to implement in the next sprint. And if you implement that in the next sprint, we'll find some improvement, right? So that improvement is the delta. So we call these delta sessions too, but it's a sprint retrospective event. In some of the questions in PSM1 or even in PMI SAP or PSPO, they give options like which of these is not a sprint event. So some of those kind of questions, some are direct, some questions would be like, this is happening, what is the event where this thing happens, of that sort. So be ready for some small situational questions too. The last but not least is the Scrum Artifacts. Some artifacts are, just like the technical specification documents, functional specification document, wireframe documents, requirement gathering documents, which we have in the waterfall. There's a lot of documentation in waterfall, whereas in Scrum, there are very few. I mean, most of these things are done on Jira in actual software development projects, and all those are the four which you see on the screen. Product backlog. We talked about product backlog, which is a ordered list of everything, the user stories that needs to be in the final product. Sprint backlog is the selection of the items for that particular sprint with a goal, and delivering and realizing it before the sprint goal. And then increment. I was using the word product increment. Product increment is basically the software that can be released into the production at the end of the sprint. Not every sprint will give us an increment, because there are a few compound and complex stories that take multiple sprints to develop. So if you have a question in the exam, it says, and every sprint has a product increment, true or false? It's plainly false. So increment is basically that can be released at the end of the sprint. Definition of done, which I did not touch it during the call till now, because you'll get a lot of questions on definition of done during the exam. Definition of done is nothing but okay, as a stakeholder, as a development team, as a product owner, what's actually done? What do you mean by the feature is developed? So definition of done gives you conditions that testing has to be done, this has to be developed, this has to be integrated. You'll have few steps that needs to be performed for every user story. That's definition of done. And this definition of done should be agreed between the stakeholders, between the product owner and the development team, so that everyone looks at the definition of done and says, yeah, this product increment is done, it can be released. Now look at the definition of done. This activity is not done for this product increment, so we'll not be releasing the increment at the end of the sprint. So those kind of decisions are made based on definition of done, and definition of done is shared among multiple people. If you read the Scrum guide, you'll have a lot of information on that, but having the basics right is very important. Yeah, that's about this session. What this session helps you in is it'll help you in cracking PSM1, CSM, PSPO, CSPO. Primarily PSM1, and the PSM1 has 80 questions, 60 minutes. Multiple choice, you'll also find true and false. And the exam fee is 150 euros. You can take exam online anytime. You can, it's an open book, so you can Google answers too. But if you don't study, it's difficult to answer 80 questions in 60 minutes, even if you want to Google 5 to 6 questions. And you can book the exam on scrum.org. Yeah, thank you for attending the session. Now it's the questions time. Any questions, or you want me to go through any slide again or provide more details, please shoot. Okay, Someone, did you get any questions by any chance?
No, Ella.
Okay, then. Yeah, thank you for attending this session. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, Ella.
Thank you, everyone.